This is the second part of my capital budgeting videos. Make sure you watch the first part because otherwise this will not make as much sense. So we did NPV in the first one. Now we're going to do IRR, the internal rate of return. IRR, if you want to think about history and where they come from, IRR was before NPV. NPV is not as old as IRR. And for many reasons, IRR is not as precise or valid as NPV, but it has certain validity, and it is still widely used in business. But we're actually going to talk about that in the class, about NPV versus IRR. Now, to do IRR, and I'm going to use the exact same example, so I'm not going to go down the drawing of the timeline because it's exactly the same. But to do IRR, all we're going to do is it's going to go here. So let me label this one NPV, right? So this is our NPV right here, right? And now next to it, I'm going to compute the IRR. Look, this is the beauty. You don't have to change the data. The data is already there. You can just use the formula and you're done. So to compute the IRR, you're going to do IRR. There it is. And you can see modify IRR is right below it, right, for later. And now you're going to highlight the values. Now, I told you in the previous video how completely insane this is, how completely insane the net present value calculation is on Excel. And I cannot think, I don't understand what they were thinking. Because for the IRR, they actually got it right. The IRR calculation is properly coded in Excel. All you have to do is highlight the values, including the initial outlay of cash. Remember, when you use the NPV formula, you do not select the outlay of cash, the initial outflow, okay? But with IRR, you do, you just highlight them all. Done. Now let's compute the other one. Notice how I don't even need the WACC to compute IRR. This is project B. Okay, and those are my values. Okay, so what does the IRR mean? The IRR basically is telling you what the return is. So the higher the return, the better. Okay, so but you need to do a little. Just saying that is not enough. If a project has an internal rate of return of 18%, and I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's not that that's your actual return. You're not going to make 18%. The internal rate of return means something slightly different. It means it's the rate at which the project would make the NPV equal to 0. Okay, that's a little more complicated to understand than NPV, and that's actually one of the problems. So IRR is the discount rate that will force the entire NPV to be equal to 0. Think of this as the IRR is the cost of capital that will make your project break even. So if for the first project, project A, with an 18% IRR, if actually it's not 18%, it's, let me take a look. Must be 18, yeah, 18.13, yeah. Project A, with an IRR of 18.13%, that means that if your cost of capital, if you're paying, if you need to raise money to run this project, and you're paying the bank, if you take a loan, and you're paying 18.13% for that money, this project will actually have an NPV of 0. You will break even. So not really worth it, right? What's the point of doing it if you're not going to make any money? So now that you know what the IRR is, 18.13, now you're going to take that value and you're going to compare it to your WACC. Let me get my pen out. Okay. And your WACC is 10%. but your IRR is 18.13%. That means you are borrowing the cost of capital for this project. You're borrowing at 10%. That's how much is costing you, how much the money that you need is costing you, 10%. But this project has an IRR of 18.13. That means that you are actually going to make a return of 8.13%, because the first 10% in 18.13, that's going to go to pay the bank and or the bondholders, stockholders, wherever that money is coming from. Okay? At 18%, you break even. But because you're only paying 10%, that means that you get to keep the difference. And that difference is 8.13%. So in this case, the rationale here is that you always pick that value, that project that has the higher IRR, because we assume that's the one that is going to make you the most amount of money. Now, if the IRR, let's play with this. Let's do it. Let's say that project B has an initial outflow of negative 200. Let's see what happens. That was too much. That was way too much. Something in between. Perfect. Minus 125. Okay, perfect. So instead of 100, now the outlay is negative 125. So look what happened to the IRR. Your IRR is now 7.96%, but it's going to cost you, your capital is going to cost you 10%. That's your WACC, right? So basically, it's going to cost you 2% more to raise that money than your return. So you're not going to make money. You're actually going to lose 2%, right? The difference between 10% and 7.96%. So if the IRR is less than your WACC, you reject that project immediately. Okay, so if you're looking at two projects and one has an IRR, or even if you're looking at a single project and one has an IRR that is under the WACC, you immediately reject it. If you have two projects and they both have a positive IRR that is above the WACC and they're mutually exclusive, then you take the one with a higher IRR, just like NPV. In that sense, they behave similarly. This is basically the same. Okay, thank you.